Hello, hello, and welcome to Awaken Your Human Design. My name is Moni, and we have a fun show for you today. We are going to be diving into the centers. And so, first off, we're going to be talking about conditioning of the undefined centers, going through each one and how that can show up in your life and on your chart. And then we are going to be looking at completely open centers and how they differ from regular undefined centers. So, to do that today, I'm going to bring up my wonderful co host, Danny.
Can't wait. This is going to be good. This is one of those things we've had to talk about for a while and sort of get it out there, so that it's doing its thing, in my opinion. It just centers in its, and I like that we decided to sort of pull it apart.
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on it in my head a little bit of like, should we put it together and just go through the centers once? And I was like, no,
Totally good.
you
We
totally
totally
could.
could.
But yeah, I figured it would be better to do them separately. So then we could just focus in on like overall conditioning through each of the undefined centers. And then we'll like dive in extra specific and go into like
And it'll be
completely
short.
open.
It'll
Yeah,
be short,
yeah.
basically, because we've already covered the meat and potatoes. No, I love it. It's perfect.
Wonderful. So, conditioning in human design. So, conditioning, what is it? We hear this word a lot in human design. So, conditioning is outside pressure, expectation, and influences used by the mind to conform to patterns that are not part of who we are, the not self. And these are adaptive strategies which become habits and take us away from, repress, and conceal our true self and purpose for incarnating. And this pressure on our openness is triggering our minds into thinking about all that we are missing.
This is where the mind treats the body like a slave. It treats it, no, go here, no, worry about that. So basically, expend this energy, fear this, worry that, second guess your own self here, and repeat, rinse and repeat, and never stop, and then have moments of yourself, many moments of you're just being you. And then it's dotted again by the conditioning. And so it's impossible when you don't know the information. I shouldn't say impossible, but when you don't know the information, you can't really pull those two things apart. So you can start to see, oh, I am me, but I'm also not me, and I got to handle that. And that's what the conditioning is, because just conditioning generally, Moni, I mean, you'll agree with this, we're supposed to be conditioned. We're just supposed to know ourselves in the midst of it all. I mean, there's no life without the conditioning is part of the joy of life in a way, right? I would never not want to be conditioned by the person I love, for instance, or whatever, just things. So
Yeah, it's the undefined centers. Basically, anywhere that's like white in your chart is where we have receptors and we're going to be receiving information from other people. Anything that's colored in your chart, whether those are the shapes, the centers, or the gates and the channels, that's where it's consistently us. That's where you're like, that's me, that's my energy. And understanding what is us and what is that which we're receiving from the outside. So like Danny's saying, like it's not a bad thing to be conditioned. It's just like a part of life. Like you're going to be influenced by family, friends, loved ones. You're going to be influenced in these ways, but recognizing what's you and what's not you and how to make correct decisions at yourself, make correct decisions based on yourself and your defined energy, and not getting lost into that second later, that record skip beat later that comes
yes,
in that starts like talking, right? Where your body was already like, I'm not into that. And then like a second later, it's like, but this thing,
right. And then suddenly you're censoring yourself. You're editing your words. You're also a liar. You're turning into a little micro liar. It's important we don't shy away from this word. You know what I mean? It's not a judgment. It's just a truth. And I love pointing out to people who you are and who you're not. And this is the most fundamental aspect of that conversation, or one of the most fundamental aspects of it, because the openness is what we're open to, and we think we're supposed to be it. That's the conditioning. And much of this is that leftover seven-centered conditioning from just a couple hundred years ago.
mm-hmm.
That's from 1781 when the changeover took place, and we're still in a hangover, that old seven-centered conditioning where mind did treat this body like a slave. And they were sort of okay with that. They loved mind back then, they just very yang, all yang, no yin.
Well, and like mind was useful in that time in creating the world and surviving the world. Like you had to be
They,
smart to survive. It was harder to do that back in
yeah,
the day.
it was survival oriented. Mind was so successful at it that why wouldn't they be patting themselves on the back about mind? Mind figured this out. Mind is the most powerful thing ever.
Absolutely. Whereas like now it's like we have so much mind, we have so much mental all the time. We have so much information coming at us that like our brains can't even process it. Like we've like outrun that use of like
Yes.
mind as top factor. And I just want to like even further a point you made earlier of like the conditioning causes us to lie. And like you said, it's not a judgment, right? And it's not from this place of pathology, typically, right? Most of
Right.
us, we're not trying to like lie and be manipulative. I find it's usually out of this like, oh, I should help out with this thing. Oh, I should be nice. Oh, there's this expectation. It's usually in trying to be nice or good that we can not listen to our bodies saying, hey, maybe don't do that. And
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Yeah, and then not trying to be caught at something or seen as something, which the conditioning of the centers, those not self voices, are going to clearly show how that, enslaves us. And again, it treats the body like a slave. You will schlep more miles in your life due to your not self if you don't know what that is. And you get to see it all on your deathbed, so you can wait if you want. I mean, right when you're going, the two crystals, they start to disorganize and come together, and the being always gets this, oh, and it's, if they don't know better, that dope is can very easily be I shoulda.
Mm,
Imagine that. It's like wrong time.
yeah, what could have been.
Oops. Oopsie. Anyway,
Awesome. So ready to dive in?
dive in.
Cool. So we're going to start off with the head center. And for the purposes of our exploration, we're going to be starting from the centers that are most commonly undefined, right? These are the most likely that you have one of these. And then we're going down to the most rare. And so basically it ends up being like the centers that have the least amount of gate activations possible to the most. So the head is the most common center to be undefined because it has 3 gate possibilities. So
Yeah.
the head
And
center,
only one other center pointing at it.
yeah,
So it's just very limited. Yep.
absolutely. So the head center is about mental pressure and inspiration. And so 73.8% have this undefined. And this shows up as amplifying others' questions and inspirations. And the not self shows up as thinking about things that don't matter. Or you can even ask yourself the question, am I thinking about things that don't matter? Or how am I thinking about things that don't matter? And the secret here is to refuse to act out of mental pressure and instead remaining a detached observer of your thoughts. And remember, you don't have to figure it all out.
It's so true. And you don't, and you're actually not supposed to. That which gets figured out throughout your daily life, and in accordance very much with you know, with your strategy and authority. And the rest of the definition that is you, it shows up, in other words. All the figuring out very much happens in that creative pulse. But I always flesh it out for people. I say thinking about things that don't matter, thinking about concepts that won't do anything to you, thinking about stuff other people said, thinking about all of it, thinking that you have to think about all of it, concerning yourself that if you don't think about it, it's going to come back and it's going to bite you and it's going to kill you. And really and truly, this is hard. This is one of those now comments. It's about thinking about things that don't matter to you right now. And when you add the right now, you get rid of the rest of the argument anyone could give themselves. But I have to think about how I'm going to put gas in my tank tomorrow. But I have to think all these various things. It's about what's literally right now. And you'll find out a rule of thumb is there's very often nothing or just one or maybe 2 things. That's it out of the 1,000 that go through.
Of like what actually matters.
What actually matters right now is almost nothing half the time, except whatever you're interested in. What you're into right now. That's what matters.
Yeah. And like the head center, I find it's like asking questions that like nobody's, or like trying to answer questions that nobody's asking, or trying to ask these questions that like not even yours. And I call it a figure it out loop. And
Yep.
that's when I'm just asking myself like endless questions, or I'll see this like with my boyfriend because we both have this open. So together it's still open. And it's just we've answered the questions. We've gotten through what we need to have gotten through, but we're still just like looping in some stupid conversation or answering the same questions because it's like, I just like being near you. And so we'll do it. And it's like, dude, we're in a figure it out loop. It's just this spiral thing. And it's like, if this is an undefined center for you, like we will never figure it out. We will never get to that point of like, it's done. I did it. I asked the questions I needed to ask. There's not like a check, ding, you did it, done. It just ends up swirling. So if you can notice yourself swirling in that and just be like, no, I'm out. And just like walk away and pull yourself out of that whirlpool.
And it's very much that what Moni just said is exactly accurate. And it's very much because it is a pressure center biochemically and genetically inside of our body. This head center, this pineal gland, this sort of deep gray area that basically remembers everything and has some form of connection to the rest of the universe. Everyone always says the pineal gland is, something. And
Third
I
eye.
agree. There's something
Yeah.
with it. And because it is mechanically a pressure, the pressure, you can see it on me. The pressure's right here, and it shows up in our face and it shows up everywhere because we think we have to answer all the questions, and then we start to maybe avoid even questions. Now we're getting into that thing where we're not telling ourselves the truth. It didn't matter, and then you start to get relief to yourself when you realize I don't have to think about all the things. I'm still anxiety ridden for a minute here, but it's not me. When you first get in your experiment and you hear the words Moni and I are saying right now, just say this stuff to yourself this way. It's not me. I see it's happening, and I guess it's not me. So I don't have to think about all the things. I don't have to answer everyone else's questions because the questions will come in fast and furious, and it'll make you feel less than if you can't. And suddenly you start avoiding things, and just the not self of the open head center will treat you like a slave under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that like, if you can even like detach yourself a little bit of like, my mind is saying, as opposed to like, I'm thinking about, like, instead of making that a personal I, you can be like, my mind is saying this stuff. And then you can have a little distance of like, oh, cool, it's just doing stuff up there and I don't need to give into it or
Doing that
worry.
thing. I'm still a little uncomfortable, I guess, but it's not me. It's that thing. It's doing its thing. It's who you're not. The openness is literally by definition who you're not. And so that means 70, that means what, 25 and change percent of the people only have a defined head center, and everyone else is walking around concerning themselves with things that don't matter, like expending energy on things that don't actually matter.
Yeah, it's literally just spinning your wheels.
Yep. Yep. And they're amplifying the defined head centers of those who are defined. It's not like there's any shortage of them. You go into any room of even more than 4 or 5 people, someone's going to have defined head center, or you're going to find it to define it together. Most likely. Yep.
Cool. Ready to mosey on?
Moseying on.
Cool. So next up, we have the will center or the ego, or even it's like the heart center. And this is about willpower, ego, and the material world. And 62.6% have this undefined. This shows up as amplifying others' worth and value. The not self is always trying to prove its worth. And again, you can always ask that question of how am I trying to prove my worth, right? If this is undefined in you, then asking, am I trying to prove myself or how am I trying to prove myself? And the secret is never make promises to yourself or others. Don't chase external validation or praise. And remember, you have nothing to prove to anyone ever.
Ever. I first learned this. I have a completely open ego. And I learned this one time when I had to go to court, and I just chose to trust my strategy and authority, and it was just a stupid thing, but it was nerve-wracking. And there was someone else on the other side, and it was awful. I didn't like it. And but I just went in and asked myself. And they're like, "Aren't you prepared for anything?" I was like, "Prepared. I'm here. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here as myself." I said, I just think like that. And what ended up happening was myself was apparently an impressive creature, because at the end of it all, they were like, I can't tell that Mr. Edwards isn't, totally saying what he means. And I won the day.
Yeah,
And I should have been, my not self would have been, because he and the paper and look at this and look at that. I didn't have anything important enough to meet that description. Like I didn't have, if I had a canceled check or something proving something, I would have brought it, but it just brought me, just me. And it worked out perfectly. I had nothing to prove. And I thought I did. I mean, I kept thinking I did.
Yeah, I feel like in another situation, an undefined will in like this court situation or some kind of, interpersonal squabble, it
Yep.
can be like, and like it'll try to puff itself up of like, I need to prove myself and I need to fight and I need to show that I'm some big whatever. And if you did that, usually ends up looking foolish when I see like an undefined whale trying to prove themselves. Like it always ends up as like, oh, look at you, you're doing that. It always feels very uncomfortable. And you'd come off as false and trying to puff yourself up. And like the judge or whoever would then see this as like, what are you trying to prove? You look like a fool. You're trying to show off. Whereas like you just showed up and kept like listening to, sacral responding when they asked you these yes or
Answering the
questions.
questions that made me sound guilty, even a little bit, like politically speaking, not really speaking, but sort
Yeah.
of politically. Don't admit that. That doesn't look good. That's an open ego thing. Doesn't look good. It's awful. The other thing about an open ego is there's a lot of questions. You'll be able to add a couple too, but one of my favorites is you look at yourself and start asking and seeing, do you have the sensation ever in your life, and even now and again, hey, I want to be good at that thing. How come that other person's so much better than me? I feel less. I'm noticing I'm getting little dagger spikes into my will and to my feeling of a healthy self because someone else does something really good or better than you, or that you're even measuring that it's better than you. See, the defined ego won't bother with that. They might make a quick measurement, and if they don't feel like competing that competition, they're out.
Not my
And if,
thing.
and if someone asks them later, their big fat ego might do one of two things. It might say, "No, I could have beat their butt if I felt like it," or it might say, "No, no, nope, didn't wanna." You know,
Yeah, the
and
willpower is literally not there in
it's just
yeah, we
yeah,
don't care so much.
it's calmer in that way, and that open ego is not calm at all. In fact, this is probably one of the more decisively, because it amplifies. If it's open and you remember this word amplification, like it says up here, everything around that is ego needed is being amplified out of you, including the need to say yes, like gate 29 does, right? To just go along with a thing and or whatever. Someone asks you to do something, you don't want to seem like you can't do it. Someone says, hey, will you get back to this? You don't want to say no, so you say yes. But the truth is, it doesn't feel good. That's a great way to see that you're an open ego being. It just doesn't feel good. It's like, I might not do the thing. And now you start lying. The open ego is a big liar. Oh, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. Half the time you won't. Moni, how much have you run into the people that don't do the thing?
It's
Tell us.
dude,
Tell us, Moni.
it's honestly maddening because I have a defined will. I'm an ego projector. It's like one of my two centers, right? So like I'm a very much a will being, and it is maddening talking to an undefined will when they're trying to prove themselves or trying to promise things. And so if this is someone close to me, then I'm always like, hey, you don't have to commit. Like, let me just know if you change your mind. Like I really try to give them that out because it's really exhausting and like it's even like upsetting because I'm like, now my heart is like up on something and thinking that you're committed to something that you can't. Like the undefined will cannot commit. Just don't do it. Just leave everything tentative as much as you can. Obviously, like life is life and do what you got to do. But if you can with friends or situations, being like, cool, I'll try to make it. I'll see how I feel the day of, right? Like leave it tentative because that feels way better to be on the receiving end than you feeling like you need to commit to something that you cannot commit to and then you like let me down. Like that's super agitating. And it's also in the same way, like any of these undefined centers, you can get caught up in the energy of the other, but just know like
Amplifying it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like you're never going to get to that satisfaction point. Like an undefined will is never going to be like, I did it. I've proven myself and now I am worthy and I'm done chasing that. Like that will never happen. You will never get to that like I did it point. It just becomes another thing and you're like, I'm going to go accomplish this and I don't feel any kind of like, yay, I did it. And you're going to go accomplish this other thing and not feel like, oh, I did it and check mark. It's just going to keep spinning the wheels like these undefined centers because if it was your energy, there'd be like an on off of some kind, but it's not. So all you're doing is continually amplifying this other guy's will and this other guy's, and maybe the planets are lighting something up. Like you're amplifying somebody else's that like it's just going to be transient. Like it's never going to be yours. You're never going to get that like check I did it off switch. So the sooner you can stop giving into that and stop being so offended, right? Because that's like the undefined will is the most
Yes.
easily
It's easily
offended.
defended. Oh my God, you can see it in the news.
Oh yeah.
You can
Oh
see it
yeah.
in lots of commentary, talky type things. It's, oh yeah, sports. You see it all over the place in that kind of way. the undefined, so they don't get the ego reward. That's what Moni was referring to.
Yeah.
The defined people have this rewarded ego that actually carries them for weeks or years or days at a time. It feels really good. It's healthy. It's perfect for them. And we feel less than as soon as they start feeling that. And it causes us to, oh yeah, it causes us to like amplify that. And suddenly we start competing with them. You'll notice if you look a bunch of charts around your lifetime, that in your open ego, you'll find the ego people very often you accidentally started to compete with. And it happens with arguments. You know, if the open head holds on to, words someone else said because it just keeps, trying to think about things that don't matter. The open ego will do the same thing as a will center that feels deeply unworthy. That's the basic root thing underneath it all, is this unworthiness. My bestie, oh, she's got a defined ego, a big, great big defined ego, and it's not attached directly to her mouth, but it's close enough. There's two different activations going into the throat, and it shows, and I never try to compete, no
Oh,
matter what.
bless your
Yeah,
heart.
no, no, no matter what happens, I hear it, I see it. It's fire, and it's a type of passion I wouldn't want to go without. It's just amazing, and I don't have to explain to that ego that, oh, thanks for an ego boost. I'm going to go dig some holes now, because the open ego is really happy to bring home the little dead rat of the 10 dug holes to its mommy. It's a very innocent thing if you just let
Mhm.
it. Now I'm speaking from the voice of a generator, so the other types put your own spin on that, but I'm speaking from a satisfaction, how it's so satisfying, and I don't feel like a slave. Before, I would have felt like a slave, and I would have been easily enslaved. An undefined ego has a real hard time unenslaving itself, has a hard time asking for that raise. Defined egos always get a little more dough, en masse. If you take the whole measurement, defined ego will definitely make more and the same job description by at least a little bit.
Mhm.
It's just the thing they do.
Yeah, and with all the undefined centers, like be aware of like the quality of people you're with that have that defined, right? Because I've noticed I have a defined will, and I have absolutely noticed like when I'm in a good place and I've been resting and taking care of myself, the people around me with undefined wills, they're all in like a happier, better place. They're like vibing, they're in a good time kind of mode. Whereas when I'm in the lower place and I'm tired and I haven't rested and I've overworked myself, the people around me will look real squirrely, right? Like they're going to look really on edge because like they're amplifying the quality of my will. So if you have this undefined and there's people in your life that have this defined, like try to hang out with the ones who are like taking good care of themselves and resting and doing that, like keeping their promises, right? Like the people who really have integrity, like, you are in a way like the summation of the people you hang out with. So, just be aware of who around you has this defined and the quality of that energy, because you're going to be doubling it up. And Danny disappeared, so I'm hoping he's going to come back soon. Oh, yeah, we have a comment. So Love to Neil C says, you guys are awesome. Thank you for sharing your I Ching knowledge so we can all learn on it. Thank you so much. It is really wonderful to like be receiving comments and positive feedback, because it's a lot putting into it, and it's super fun, and I hope that you guys are vibing with it, because I definitely enjoy it, and it's really fun to like have a reason to deep dive and come up with these presentations and then like bring Danny along, like we're going to talk about this for a while. So thanks for hanging out. Also, Friends with Audio, you were commenting earlier and I was just typing it back, so thanks for hanging out and sending the positive feedback, because yeah, it means a lot that you guys resonate. Sometimes I'm doing this and I'm like, do people like this? I don't know, they seem to be, they're subscribing, they're doing it. So it really means a lot to be able to read some comments and get that feedback, because yeah, it's just nice. So I'm gonna keep moving on, and hopefully Danny finds his way back to us. So here we have the ajna, and this is about conceptualizing and interpreting, right? So if the head center is about inspiration and it's asking questions, then the ajna is like receiving those questions, and it's like, how am I going to process this? and 52.9% have this undefined. And this shows up as amplifying others' mental processing, and the not self shows up as trying to be certain. So the question you can ask is, am I trying to be certain? Or how am I trying to be certain? How am I trying to prove that I know these things in this like mental capacity? And the secret is recognizing you cannot be certain about anything and just enjoying your mind as a mental playground. And remember, you don't have to know all the answers, right? Like, can get really caught up in thinking that we have to know these things, that we have to have all these answers, because again, we're amplifying it from the people who have it defined. And we're amplifying it times two. So it's not like you just, if you're feeling in, it's a little more, like you're doubling it up. So this one, I feel like this is kind of like the argument starter, or like you just get in worse arguments. I find my boyfriend has this defined and I have it undefined, and we'll end up in these like silly arguments where I'm like, I have to show that I know this thing, and I have this other source, and I watched this video, and I have this reference point. And it's like, why? None of these things actually matter in any real capacity. It's just this pressure to have the answers to things, to be able to process that mental data. And it's again, it's like, it's those loops that we can get into, the spiraling wheels, that you're not going to like get to that point of satisfaction. You're not going to get to that point of like, I did it, I proved myself, and I know all the things. You know, it's just going to keep looping in that uncertainty and just trying to prove it when there's nothing really there that you can ever get to an end point on. Oh, friends with audio. Thank you for commenting, especially because Danny's not here. I'm like, I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to. He's having some internet trouble, so I'm hoping he can refresh that and get back to that. So friends with audio says, it's nice to hear the knowledge without the you can earn six-figure sales speech. Yeah, absolutely. I feel you on that, where it's just like, can I earn six figures, or are you just going to earn six figures on trying to sell me the program on how to earn the six figures? We definitely love to just nerd out on the core information, because I feel like it's really diluted, right? Like it's like throwing a rock into a pond and then the ripples all go out. And like the farther you get away, it's this diluted, it's this unpure kind of source. And like so many people just like, I know, pop HD making stuff up. So I'm glad you guys like this source core information, because we super, super love it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking about the Ajna Center on my own until Danny gets back here. So Ajna Center stuff. Yeah, recognize you can't be certain about anything. I've definitely like struggled with this in my own way, in my own like academic of like, I'm going to find it out. I'm going to have all the information and I'm going to show everyone that I'm smarter than them. I feel like the undefined Ajna can really have that chip on its shoulder of not thinking you're smart enough and really having to like show that you know things. And I even remember when I was in school as a little girl, I ended up getting in trouble once because apparently I was saying, I don't know too much. And I was just answering questions like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I had like the teacher talked to my mom, and my mom had to talk to me about not saying I don't know so much. And I feel like it was this like early like layer of conditioning of like, no, you can't not know. You need to be certain. You need to prove that you are certain and that you have these answers, or you're going to get in trouble. The adults are going to be mad, and you're going to be in trouble that you don't know, that you're uncertain. So like that's the conditioning, right? It's the stuff that we get from family, friends, and even like school. It's this, you can't be as you are. You need to be that which you're not, that what you are isn't enough. You have to be more than that. You have to be all those open receptor sites where you're supposed to just be feeling in with other people. No. You need to, run yourself ragged and spin your wheels trying to show that you know these things. So play with that. Practice, that you don't have to know all the answers. Like allow yourself to just be like, okay, maybe I can just take it in, right? Because like the gift here is being able to gauge the quality of other people's mental processing, and maybe lean back into that and like allow yourself to like breathe, of like, oh, that sigh of release of I don't have to know all the things and prove that I have all the knowing. Like, you don't have to have all the answers. That's not your job. Like, that's going to be the job of the people who have that defined. So play with that. I'm going to move along onto the solar plexus. So the solar plexus is about emotional and social awareness, and 47.1% have this undefined. And this shows up as amplifying others' emotional waves. And the not self is avoiding conflict and truth. So the question you can ask yourself is, am I avoiding conflict and truth? Or how am I avoiding conflict and truth? Because it can feel so heavy and thick, and we're just like, I don't want to deal with it. So the secret here is remaining emotionally cool. And if there's a sudden emotional discomfort, leave the room until the coolness returns. And remember, you don't have to pacify others' feelings. So this one's really interesting because the solar plexus, right, and the emotional solar plexus, it shows as a wave, right? That's how you hear about it, is people have to wait out their wave, the ups and the downs. But what I find extra interesting is when, like, being undefined solar plexus, there, you can really feel a viscosity. You can feel a thickness and a depth of other people's emotional energy. So if you're around somebody that's like high in their emotional wave, it can feel light and bubbly. It's like champagne. You know, I remember being at a surprise birthday party several years ago, and the energy when we were waiting for that person to arrive was so bubbly and champagne-y and like little bubble happy. And compare that to if you're around somebody with who's emotionally defined and they're in a low place in their wave, it can feel like molasses. It can feel like you are just drowning in this syrup and this thickness, and it's so heavy that it's just exhausting you and you're drowning in it. And knowing that we feel that variety from the bubbly champagne to the thick molasses goop, like, no wonder we're avoiding conflict and truth. Nobody wants to drown in molasses. And so I definitely have found in my life that I can get very stuck in trying to people please and trying to keep everyone happy and being like this little like happy performer and be cute and dancy and wiggly and make everyone smile and make them laugh and be a comedian, keeping them happy in that way. Because maybe if I keep them happy, I won't have to drown in that molasses wave. And that can get really exhausting. And it's ultimately like futile, right? All this undefined center stuff, when you're trying to be that which you're not, it's futile. It's spinning your wheels. Like, you can be the happiest, best clown performer in the world, and you're not going to be able to really impact somebody else's emotional wave that much. Like, that wave is going to do what that wave is going to do, and you're not going to be able to stop the ocean with a song and a dance, you know? So I really love this like secret of remaining emotionally cool and like walk away. If you're in a room that's suddenly getting like, ugh, and it's feeling molassesy and the water's rising and you're getting all nervous, like, you don't have to be stuck in that. You don't have to be stuck in someone else's emotional wave. You don't have to pacify them, and you don't have to be stuck in it. You can just walk away for a little bit and regroup into yourself, because that's really the most important thing. Is like, when the energy gets weird, especially between you and another person or a group, if you just walk away for like 10, 15 minutes and you can just be in your own little energy bubble, you can just feel that drops away and you're like, oh, wait, that's not me. That's actually not my energy. That's totally this other person. Whereas when we're just kind of stuck in it and we don't feel we can walk away, or we think that, no, we have to solve this right now and I can't walk away. I need to prove myself, right? Whether that's like an undefined will, or I need to prove my ajna knowing, or I can't walk away, or I'm so angry, or for whatever reason, it's just going to make it worse. It's like when you're trying to like untangle like a little knot, and if you start getting mad at it and pulling at it, it's just going to make it tighter and more matted. Whereas like if you just stop and breathe and kind of regroup, then everything chills out. And especially if you can be in your own aura for like 10 or 15 minutes, it really calms things down. And then you can come back to it, right? You can wait 10, 15 minutes and come back to each other and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be a jerk, or however it comes up. But you can at least have this level of awareness of, you don't need to react to somebody else's emotional wave within your body. Like, you don't need to let that control you. And if you can pause and just be with it for a little bit, or even just like walk away from that other person's energy and be with yourself for a little bit. That's it. That's the key, right? Be with yourself for a little bit and regroup that, hey, that's not mine. And I don't need to let that rule my life. Like, I don't need to let that conditioning affect me. Like, we're here to be able to, witness other people on the wave. Like, we don't have to be on that boat, you know? Yeah, what was it? It was a while back. It was my mom wanted to go to some restaurant, and I knew exactly what I want. I have a defined will. I'm like, this is what I want. And she was like, because she's emotional wave, and she had to like go through it all. And she ends up looking at like for the next hour and a half, like looked at every single restaurant like in the neighborhood, checking all the reviews, looking at the menu, sending me all the menus, and like asking me. And it got to this point, I was like, dude, this isn't even about me. I knew what I wanted an hour ago. You need to ride out your wave, but I don't need to be on that boat, right? Like, the boat has to go on these like ups and downs of that wave and like vibe it all out and feel into it and see where they're at and find their clarity and make their decision. Like, I don't have to do that. I'm getting seasick. Like, I don't want to be on the up and down boat. You can be on the up and down boat. I'm going to go to another room so I don't have to feel that exhaustion and that sloshing around. So, play with that, play with being able to, remain emotionally cool and walk away for a little bit, leave the room and see if that calms it. And, oh, wait, it's not me. That's not my energy. That's interesting. Like, that's the coolest thing about human design is just, here's a thing you can look at, see if you can see it. And then you see it and it's like, oh, that's neat. And yeah, play with that aspect of solar plexus conditioning, because I know it can feel like drowning sometimes. So it's like, you can walk away, you don't have to deal with that in the moment, right? If it's a longer situation, right? If this is like a relationship with somebody, of like, yeah, like, don't avoid conflict and truth. Don't like forever be like afraid of emotional energy. But in a moment, like, you're allowed to regroup and come back when cooler heads will prevail. And play with that aspect of the solar plexus. And moving on, we have the spleen. And so the spleen is about health, well-being, and spontaneity. And 45.2% have this undefined. And this shows up as amplifying others' health and wellness. And the not self is hanging on to what is not good for you. So the question you could ask is, am I hanging on to stuff that's not good for me? Or how am I hanging on to stuff that's not good for me? And the secret is that spontaneity is not for you, and recognize your own needs that you need to attend to. And the secret is that you don't have to cling in fear for survival. So this whole thing, like, spontaneity is not for you. So spontaneity is for the people who have the defined spleen, right? Because that defined spleen is running its little scans and making sure, like, hey, you're safe. This is safe. This is not safe, right? It's going to be giving that person those intuitive hits about their health. But if you have your spleen undefined, we're not getting those regularly. We're not getting those regular intuitive hits in the same way. So spontaneous stuff is not for us. We're not here to be, doing crazy, dangerous stuff, because our body is not going to be giving us that same, note on if this is healthy or not. And on the other side is recognizing your own needs to attend to. So if you have an undefined spleen and you're around a defined spleen, especially if they're like a good quality spleen that's taking care of themselves and like they are in a healthy place, like, they can feel like really good, and you will just feel way better. Being around a defined spleen when it's undefined can be like, oh my God, it feels so safe. It feels so nice. It's almost like an unearned trust. I have found, you're like, oh, I feel so good with this person. I just trust you and I feel so good, which can be potentially dangerous. Like, be careful on that, because you can be with somebody who has a defined spleen and they feel good and trustworthy, but in reality they are not, right? Don't let that make your decision for you, because you don't have like a clear sense of it, because you're just feeling into how good they feel. And making sure that you're taking care of your needs like extra, to be extra good on the self-care, making sure you're eating good and sleeping well and you're drinking water and you're doing all these things. Because if you're hanging out with a defined spleen, you're going to feel great. You're going to feel fine. And it's almost like you're getting an incorrect reading on your health, because you're not feeling into your health, you're feeling into this other person's health. So this happened with a friend of mine a while ago, where he was hanging out with somebody, and they were hanging out overnight, doing what they're doing. And the next day I came by and I got there, and I've never seen him look so unwell. I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why do you look like you're about to like pass out? And like, do I need to take you to the hospital? And it's because he'd been hanging out with this other person for, a day and a half or whatever, and not taking care of his own needs because he felt fine in this other person's defined spleen. And as soon as that defined spleen was out of the picture, he looked like he was on death's door. He looked pale and miserable. And then I needed to tend to him and get him, some food and some water and let him sleep and do all these things to like bring him back. And so in that, it's like we both learned, like, if you have an undefined spleen, like, you have to take extra good care of yourself, because it's really easy to just chase the good feelings of somebody else with a defined spleen. And as soon as they're not in the picture, like, you're going to be in like a low and shabby state. Like, it's not gonna be fun for you, because it's like eventually it's like the chickens are going to come home to roost kind of thing. Like, you haven't been taking care of your health and your wellness, and now it's going to bite you in the butt. So yeah, with that undefined spleen, making sure that you're taking extra good care of yourself. And the undefined spleen can feel like it doesn't have what it needs to survive. It's not going to make it through. The world is big and scary and dangerous, and I don't have what it takes. And so in that, it can really like cling. It can cling to people, places, objects that are not necessarily good for it, right? Like, this is, the person that's in the bad relationship, and they try to break up like 10 times, and they just cannot get away from the person. And I've definitely been in that situation. And even if you're like ready and you're screaming at the person, you're breaking up, and it's like happening, as soon as you're back into the same aura with that person, it's like, and you're stuck again. I was in a relationship for far too long, because every time I tried to get away, that would exactly happen, until it finally had to get so bad that it was just like destroy and run away. But yeah, being aware of, like, if you're clinging on to people or things, right? This can also be like hoarding and hanging on to objects that, hey, maybe I'll need this someday. Maybe I'll need this someday. Maybe I have this. Maybe this will help me survive. And then you end up surrounded by stuff, and you don't even know what it is or where it is. And you wouldn't even like know how to find it if you needed it. But it's being so afraid that you can't survive in the world that you're going to cling to anything that might help you out. And there's a place for like safety and be prepared for emergencies and whatnot. But if it's healthy for you, is this person actually good for your long term? Are these objects really necessary? Are these really benefiting your life? Or are they just cluttering it up and making your life more miserable? So, being aware of that. And with any undefined center, it's like, what is the quality of the definition you're hanging out with? If you're hanging out with somebody that's not taking good care of themselves, like, your spleen is going to feel really bad too. We can tune into the health and wellness of other people. And it can be kind of weird, because there's times where I've seen somebody, I'm like, oh, they feel like they're in a really bad place. They don't feel well. Or like, oh, I think they're going to pass on soon. Like an older, neighbor, this happened a while ago. And then a few weeks later, they passed on. And it's like, I almost felt bad or guilty because I had that thought, but it was like, I wasn't like wishing it upon him. It was just like, oh, I could tell that the quality of that person's health was, on that decline, and they're towards the end. So we can be really aware of the health and wellness of other people, and which can be good and bad, right? Like, if you get sucked up into other people, you can have a weird time. But, if somebody maybe is in the medical field or some kind of wellness industry, then that could actually help them, because you can feel into like, hey, what is the quality of this other person's health? And you can use it in a healthier way. Just being aware of when you're clinging on to somebody or something that's not good for you is the main thing to be aware of with the undefined spleen. And Danny seems to be having some ongoing connection issues, and so I don't know if he's going to make it back. So still crossing my fingers, but otherwise I'm just going to keep moseying on my own. Next up, we have the identity, or it's also called the G center. And this is love, identity, and direction. And this is 43.5% of the population has this undefined, and they amplify others' way of being. And the not self is looking for love and direction. So the question you can ask yourself is, am I looking for love and direction, or how am I looking for love and direction? And the secret here is that you're sampling directions and you're collecting your correct places. Because with the undefined G, if you're in the wrong place, you're with the wrong people. And remember that you don't have to find yourself, right? So this one's really interesting because the G center is almost like, I think of like a San Francisco like streetcar, or like a trolley or tram system in like, neighborhoods or towns. And the defined G is like, we have like our set track and our set route, and this is where we're going in life, and like we have that path set out for us. And when you have like an undefined G, it's like you get to like jump onto other people's trolleys and their streetcars, and you get to see where they're going. And you're meant to, right? Like you're meant to be receptive in that way, but you have to be very aware of the quality of the environment that you're in, because if you're in the wrong place, you're going to be with the wrong people, and you can be taken on a ride, right? Like the proverbial ride. If you have this undefined, and you're never going to have that defined sense of self and that sense of direction of where you're going. And this could be, vulnerable in a way, because if you're in the wrong place, like you're going to be with the people who are going in the wrong direction, and they're going to take you on their wrong direction. Like they're going to take you, and that can go down some like weird and dark places. And so it's very important, because you're collecting the places that are correct for you, right? Like you're sampling this person's direction, and you're sampling where that person's going, and you're seeing where that person's going. And you also have this way of the sensitivity to the environment, where you can like feel into the quality of the environment. And if it's a weird environment, or you feel funny, like let's say you walk into a restaurant and you get like a weird vibe, like go somewhere else. That's not going to be the place for you, because you have this environmental sensitivity, and like use that to your advantage. Like that's a place of wisdom and knowing of, is this the right place for me? And is this the right direction for me? Because yeah, you can get taken on the ride. Or if you're with the right places, with the right people in the right places, you can be taken on to like the cool places that they're going to, right? And I've seen this with friends that, in maybe a previous part of their life, they were in the wrong places with the wrong people and got taken some not good places. And you can really see somebody's life kind of fall apart with that. And then they meet, the love of their life that has a defined identity. And now all of a sudden it's like they're on the straight and narrow, and they're being taken to the correct place. And maybe they're even moving which city that they're in, because this person with this defined identity is meant to condition them, right? Like our undefined centers, we're meant to receive that information and receive that conditioning from other people when it's correct for us. And this is when it goes back into like your own strategy and authority, right? Like whatever your authority is, you tune into that, because that's going to then tell you, is this the right person? Is this the right place for this person to condition me? Right? If you have a defined sacral and an undefined identity, and you meet somebody and your sacral's like, yeah, I'm totally into this person and I love where they're going, well, then you're meant to be conditioned by that person's definition, because your body has decided, yeah, that's right for me. I'm meant to receive this data and information and see where it takes me. And that's like the key to it all, where it can get kind of overwhelming with human design of like, there's this deconditioning and this conditioning and this not self and this, that, and these questions and these keynotes. And it can get like overwhelming in a way, but the caveat, right? The clincher there is, but you have your own internal system to say, is this good or bad for me? Right? That spleen that in the moment of like, yep, this is totally cool, or like, no, it's not, get out of there, right? The defined will that has the, energy and the willpower for it or not, the emotional solar plexus that's going to ride that wave, right? Reflectors, wait out your month, whatever that is for you and your authority, it's going to be what guides you on if this conditioning and this person is correct for you. Because some people are not. And as much as, you want to be nice and you want to be cool with people, if they're not right for you and your authority is saying that's not right for you, you can get really taken on some like weird places. You can really mess up your life in a lot of ways if you're letting that not self steer the wheel instead of knowing, hey, this is what's right for me, this is what's not right for me, and being able to let the proper things in for you. So yeah, defined or undefined identity. I'm trying to think if there's like other things. Oh yeah, this, you don't have to find yourself, right? There's like undefined identity people can be really cool because it's like you guys get to try the poo poo platter, right? You get the buffet table of like, how is this person living? How is that person living? How is that person loving? How are they moving through the world? Right? You get to feel into how other people move through the world and who they are, and you get to play with it. You get to play with it and sample it and taste it and see what's good for you and see what's not. And you're not stuck in a way, right? Like a defined identity is like, we're going where we're going and we exist in the way that we exist. And there's not a lot of leeway there. Whereas the undefined is like, you get to try this. Like, you want to go live a beach bum life, check that out. You want to go live in Paris near the Eiffel Tower, like see how that goes for you. And you can feel into like what's correct for you. And you can be really creative and like artistic. I always think of like David Bowie has like completely open identity center. And for him, it's like, who was he? He didn't have a defined any identity. He was all these different people. He played all these different characters. And if he was trying to find himself, it's like you can go looking, but he's never gonna find, this is who I am. I found it. I found the essence of me. Like, it's not gonna happen in that way. But what's cool is you get to just explore all the ways of being and see what works for you and have fun in the process. Just don't let it make decisions for you. So yeah, overall, it's if you're in the wrong place, you're with the wrong people. So make sure you're in the right places with the right people, and, just keep collecting those good places that you feel right in and hang out there, and, allow yourself to be a little picky of like, do you feel good in the place or not? Because that's going to be a really pivotal factor for you and like where you go in life. So next up, drink some water. It's a lot of talking. My open throat is getting tired without Danny here. Oh, yay, comment. So friends with audio. So, self-projected projector, SPP, defined G center, and it does feel like things are set in stone sometimes. That's really interesting. I'd love for you to elaborate on that. Like, what do you mean? Like, for you and your energy, it feels like set in stone, or do you feel like you feel other people's? Oh no, you said you're defined. Sorry. So you're defined and you feel very set in stone with where you're going. Yeah, that makes sense, because it's like you're on that like trolley car that's going in one place in one direction, and these are your stops, right? Like, you're stopping at these different towns, and that's where you're going. I definitely relate because I have a defined identity as well. And it's like, this is who I am. This is where I'm going. Like, either get with it or get out of the way. So yeah, I definitely relate to that. All right. So now we'll move on to the root center. So the root center is physical adrenalized pressure, and 39.6% have this undefined. And the undefined root is amplifying others' pressure and starter energy. And the not self is hurrying to be free of the pressure. So you can ask yourself the question, how am I hurrying to be free of the pressure, right? When you feel yourself rushing and you think you need to do something faster. And so the secret is to step away from pressure to regroup and allow yourself time needed to complete a task. And remember, you don't have to do all the things. So the root center, it's like the gas pedal, right? It's that go, it's that adrenalized, like do something, start something new. So when this is like undefined, this conditioning is like, oh, and do another thing, and do another thing, and do another thing, right? It's like a never ending to-do list. And you feel like, oh, if I could just get to the end of this to-do list, then finally I could rest. But it's like, again, these undefined centers, it's like, you're never going to get to that point of satisfaction. You're never going to get to that point of like, I did it. I'm done now. It's just always going to add another thing onto your list. And I find like when I have this undefined, but if something's like lighting me up, I will start like 10 different projects in the house. I will start cleaning this room and I'll start cleaning this room and then I'll start doing the windows and the vacuum is here and this is that and the laundry is everywhere. Like I end up starting all these projects. And then of course I don't have the consistent energy to do it all and manage it all. And it ends up where I end up laying down and everything is just like 10 different projects started and nothing is finished. It's like, okay, that was not helpful ultimately. And yeah, we can really get lost trying to rush. And it can just feel this like almost like a cattle prod, like, do it, do the next thing, do the next thing, and do it faster, do it faster. And it just gets exhausting. It gets exhausting. It doesn't feel good. It's not great for our adrenals either. Like you end up like really wearing those out. And so with this, it's like just try to pull yourself out of that never ending to-do list, right? Just take a pause. Just try to lay down for like 5 or 10 minutes. And if you can just detach yourself from that energy flow that's pushing on you, it could just feel a lot easier. Like, oh, I don't need to rush. I don't need to finish this right now. Why am I rushing? Or even like trying to like purposefully walk slower, because I tend to just like walk fast and do all the things. And like I used to bartend and run around and handle all of these things. And it's like, why am I rushing around? I'm in my own home. I'm just hanging out. Like, why am I rushing as if there's someone behind me, like with that cattle prod telling me to do something faster and do something faster? Like there's a clock chasing me. It's like, it's not. And usually there's not really that many things to rush with. Sometimes there are. And that's like the time when it's, we can use that undefined root in a good way, right? Like, oh, hey, now it is time to rush and get out of Dodge and start something new. And we can use that energy wisely because we've learned, hey, what's worth rushing through and what's not. Sure, when I was bartending and managing like a bunch of customers and this, that, whatever, yeah, I needed to rush around because I needed to handle all these things. And if you don't handle all these things, then the whole thing is going to collapse and you're going to have a really bad night. So yeah, that was a good time for me to use that pressure. But otherwise, like I'm just hanging out in life. I don't need to rush around. Like I don't need to rush around, the grocery store or on a walking trail. And I've really found that when people are behind me on a walking trail or something, I'm like, no, I'll wait. You go around. Because I hate that, like, like they're just like cattle prodding me from behind to go faster. And it's like, no, I don't need to do this. Like, I don't need to run. I can saunter. I can just promenade. I can enjoy myself and take things slowly because the energy is not mine. Those undefined roots, you never have that sense of satisfaction. You never have the sense of like, I did it, I'm done. And now I'm not going to be rushed anymore because I finished it. It's like, no, another thing is just going to fill that space because it's not our energy, right? So maybe you're done with that one guy's pressure, but now there's this other guy's pressure. Or maybe the planets are lighting something up. There's always going to be something else that comes and like fills that void, right? Like nature abhors a vacuum. So if you have these like undefined gates and centers, they're receptive. They're gonna pull that in. And so stop chasing it. Like there's no point, or at least witness yourself chasing it. So you can be like, well, at least I can see it now. Don't think that you're ever going to be free of it because that pressure is never really going to go away. And just, try to pull yourself out of it, even if it's just for like 5 or 10 minutes. To pause that to-do list, right? To pause the next line and the next line and the next line of all the things to do. Oh, and the other really good thing is like, give yourself time to do the things that are going to take time and energy, right? Like if you're going on a big trip, like maybe don't wait till the night before and then be this like adrenalized open route rushing around mess. Like maybe start packing a week or 2 beforehand to give yourself the time to like start it and then do something else and then do a little bit more and do something else. And because that adrenalized, that over cortisol adrenal go kind of pressure stress feeling, like that's exhausting. It's not great for us. And so know when it's time to use that go rush around energy and when you can just give yourself more time and put in 15-20 minutes at a time instead of trying to rush it through the night before. Like give yourself that time to like process and marinate and develop whatever it is that needs to be developed. Give yourself that time so you're not rushing around like a chicken with your head cut off, because ultimately it's not going to benefit you. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have about the root center that's worthwhile. I know it's one of the most difficult to like decondition because it's just this do a new thing and do a new thing and do a new thing and do a new thing. So, use that energy wisely. Like you can start some new stuff, but follow your strategy and authority on if it's actually worthwhile for you and if there's like a long term to it. Because again, you might end up starting like 10 different projects that like don't go anywhere, and then you have to clean them up later when you're actually too tired. And so yeah, give yourself the time you need to get things done and to get ready for things, because it'll just be a lot easier. Like give yourself 2 days instead of one, give yourself a week instead of 2 days, whatever that is for whatever you have in your life. Just give yourself the time to process that correctly. So next up we have the sacral center. And the sacral is the power of fertility and vital energy. And 34.2% of the population have this undefined. This shows up as amplifying others' creative life force. And the not self is not knowing when enough is enough. So you can ask yourself, am I, not knowing when enough is enough? Like, do I not know when enough is enough? Am I overdoing it? Do I just keep going and going and going? And the secret is to take time to rest when needed and lay down early to ease into sleep. And remember, you don't have to work till you drop. So this is going to be, all the projectors and reflectors and the manifestors out there that have this undefined sacral, and you're going to feel the sacral energy. And the sacral feels like a buzz. It's like being in a beehive of just keep doing, just keep going, just keep going, right? It's like the little engine that could, but like in an exhausting kind of way. And you'll notice like the not self open sacrals will be the last ones running around at a party or trying to manage something, when even the generators have already like sat down and they're chilling out because their sacrals are done, and the undefined sacrals are like running around like mad because you don't know when enough is enough, right? Like these undefined centers don't have that off switch. They don't have that sense of like satisfaction, right? Of like, oh, I did it and I'm done now. Right? The sacral has this on-off capacity. So when you have that undefined, it's like, excuse me, you're just going to keep feeling the keep going, keep going, keep going. Because even if one person's sacral has turned off, this other person's is still going. And we're just going to be amplifying that exogenous energy, right? This energy that's not ours that says, just keep doing it, just keep doing it, just keep doing it. And so, try to pull out of that go, 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 continuing on energy, right? Because the root pressure is this like, start doing something new. And the sacral is like, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And if you can pull yourself out of that energy, if you can just like pause for a second, and especially laying down. So like undefined sacrals, it's like the key and secret to life is just like lay down more frequently, in the day for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like, and you don't have to nap, you don't have to sleep, right? Because that was always like, that's always the thing that kind of annoyed me, and be like, oh, you're a projector, you need to rest. And it's like, I don't even know what that means, right? When I first started human design and I was like full not self, just trying to be like everyone else and failing miserably, it was just like, you need to rest. It's like, that does not even make sense or compute in my brain to rest. Like, how do you do that? What does it mean? And it's like, no, go be horizontal. Because the key to the sacral, if you have that undefined sacral, is if you lay down, it's like you get to discharge the sacral energy and that buzz that we pick up from other people, right? Because you're constantly going to be picking up that buzz from generators and manifesting generators, right? That's like 70% of the population between the two of them. And it's just going to be exhausting. You're just going to keep going. And it really is this like, bzzz, right? When you fry out your sacral, when you're overloaded, like it's kind of like if you bring like an American hair dryer and you try to plug it in Europe, or vice versa, right? Like you try to put like the wrong electronics into like the wrong voltage, and all of a sudden you're frying your appliance because there's too much electricity going through it. And that's like the undefined sacral. Like we can use some of that sacral buzz around energy and you can have a lot of fun with it, but knowing when it's not yours, and usually there'll be a little bit of like a, hey, I'm done now and I should lay down. And then like a minute later, that not self will pop in, be like, look how much I'm doing. I'm doing great. I'm making so much progress and I'm so accomplished, right? And it's like that not self is that voice like a minute later, a second later, that's just like, no, you should keep going and you could keep doing it. And you could really fry yourself out. It really gets like an agitated, it's like, my silly example is like if you remember the Power Rangers from the 90s, and there's that little like robot Alfalfa that hung out with Zordon in the control room, and then like things would get really crazy and Alfalfa would just be like ay 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 ay, and he was like bouncing around the control room just totally overloaded. That's what it feels like if you have an undefined sacral and you're overloaded on generator buzzy sacral energy. It's just like zzz, like an electric overload, and you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing, but you feel like you need to be doing something and you need to keep doing it and you need to fix it, but you can't handle it. But if you just lie down, and it can feel like a crazy like electrical surge when you finally lay down and you start draining that out, and it can be absolutely like miraculous, and you can actually handle a lot in life if you just lay down for a few minutes, right? Even if it's just like 5 or 10 minutes, like in your car, right? You're working, but like maybe you can lay down for 10 minutes in your car on your lunch break or something. Try that. Or when we were hiking through Arizona, we'd be going on these long hikes, and like I would just find somewhere to go lay down for like 5-10 minutes, whether it's on the trail or before or after in the car, whatever it is. And like that's how you could make it through, because then you can drain some of that. It's almost like an oil change, right? There's like sacral oil change if you just lay down, and you can like let out that old buzzy energy. And then once it's empty, then you can like get up and use someone else's sacral energy for a little bit, you know? But remembering to discharge it out, and when it's not yours, that's the key to it. Like you can play with sacral energy and all the different like expressions of that, but don't think that it's yours or that you're gonna, you know, save the day by keeping doing something, because it will end up hurting you. Like it does like agitate the system, and it's just a lot easier. Just be horizontal. Just try it out. You don't have to nap. Laying down early before bed is a big thing, because if maybe let's say like your boyfriend or girlfriend is a generator and you're an undefined sacral, like they lay down when they're tired and they will fall asleep immediately, and then you're laying there and you can't sleep because you're just discharging that sacral from the entire day. And it takes about an hour. If you're like fully sacral buzzy, then it'll take like an hour of laying down to like discharge it out fully. And so especially right, you're in this situation with like a loved one and they're falling asleep and you're laying there getting annoyed because you can't sleep, and it's an hour later and they're all comfy and you're just mad. So the secret of that is laying down like an hour before you actually want to go to bed, because it's just what it's going to take to kind of drain that energy from you for the day. And you can like hang out and like play on your phone or read a book or do whatever it is that you need to do. Just give yourself that extra time to drain that buzzy energy. Like you don't have to work till you drop. It's not good for you. It doesn't even like, you end up looking a little foolish too. I definitely know that I did, because I'd be running around like mad, managing everything while everyone else is chilling out. And it's like, why am I the fool who's like running around and taking care of everything? And it's just exhausting. It's exhausting. And you end up being not nice in the process too, because you're all agitated, and just allowing yourself that extra rest and, you know, horizontal time to discharge that energy, because you'll be in a better place and everyone else will be around in a better place. And then you get like fresh, clean energy, right? Like, do you want to be like running on someone's like old, dirty, sacral meh energy? No, like let that out of your system. Like, don't let someone else, it's even like, and it's almost like a contamination, you know, like you have someone else's energy for too long, and like it can, especially if it's like a bad, icky kind of low quality generator energy, it's like that's not great for you. Whereas like if you just lay it down horizontally, it'll all discharge and you'll just feel a lot better. It's a really phenomenal feeling if you just lay down for a little bit, and then you can go play again and like get some new fresh sacral energy and to move on with and enjoy. So that's the sacral center. And finally, the most rare, we have the throat center. And this is the center for communication and manifestation. And 27.8% have this undefined, right? So the throat center has 11 possible activations to it. So it's like all roads lead to Rome is the saying. And so this is why it's going to be the most rare to have this undefined, because there's just way more, you know, probability and statistics. It's much more likely that it would be defined. And so the undefined throat amplifies others' expressions and manifestations, and the not self is looking for attention and usually finding the wrong kind. And you can ask yourself, like, am I looking for attention? Am I trying to chase that? Am I trying to get everyone to look at me and think I'm so great? Because that's what the undefined throat kind of does. And the secret is to grow comfortable with silence and stop trying to control what you say. And remember, you don't have to chase attention. And so, yeah, the undefined throat it's neat because the undefined throat can kind of like modulate its voice and use different types of vocal expressions, but it's not our own energy. And so, excuse me, we can kind of get lost in it and trying to getting people to look at us, or we don't know what to say, or the silence and the dead air feels really uncomfortable. Like not having Danny here with me right now, my completely open throat is like, keep talking, you got to keep talking, keep saying the things. Silence feels like I'm letting everyone down and I'm supposed to be saying something and entertaining everybody, right? So I could even feel this conditioning at this time. And so it's about growing comfortable with silence and stop trying to control what you say. And you don't need to like chase that attention, right? Like they're going to notice you. Like they're eventually going to, what do you have to say about this? They'll eventually invite you in to share in that way. And it'll be a lot more valuable than if you just keep jumping in, or if you keep trying to chase it, or you're like trying to look for the attention. Because you'll get that attention, but it might not be the good kind. It's not the kind that's actually like recognizing you and your qualities and what you really have to share. Because if you're just like chasing it when it's not correct timing, it's going to end up being the wrong kind of attention, and you're going to end up looking kind of foolish, or just like a try hard, like trying way too hard to get everyone to look at you. Like they'll notice you, and they're meant to notice you. So yeah, the undefined throat center. It's funny, mine's completely open. So there's even this part of me where I'm just like, I have no data on this. I have more like sense of how the completely open throat presents itself than just an undefined throat with a couple of hanging gates. So yeah, the undefined throat can be really cool, like doing impersonations or being able to talk to different kinds of people and modulating their voices to be able to talk to different people in different ways. What else is the undefined throat? Trying to think of other fun stuff for the undefined throat. My whole mind just went blank. Oh, the undefined throat. So the undefined throat, right? All our undefined centers can be really good gauges for the quality of like other people's use of that energy. So with this, it's like an undefined throat. It's like you maybe can like tell if somebody's being authentic, right? Or the quality of their speech in a way, because it's open, right? So it's like you can tell if someone's like full of it, or if they're like speaking truth in a way. And so you can use that in a positive way. You can use that in a clever way, but you don't need to like chase the attention, right? Like you can really think like it's never going to find me, like no one's ever going to notice me, and I'll never be able to get this definition that I do have out, right? Because the undefined stuff, like, or the defined stuff wants to get out. And so if it doesn't have an access to the throat, it can feel like almost helpless. Like it's never going to be able to express what it needs to express. It's never going to get noticed. It's never going to be able to shine the way it's meant to shine. But just remembering that, like, that energy, like that will find you when the timing is right. You will be, invited, or you will be, your sacral will be called to respond to something. And the people who are meant to notice will notice you and give you that like definition, right? They'll bring that out and be like, hey, you, I notice you now, like inviting you to speak, and being comfortable with that silence, because everyone's going to value you more if you do wait to speak, if they do call you out on it. Because if you say things too soon and it's not the right timing, like it's like people won't even hear you, and it can be really frustrating because you're like, everyone's talking, everyone's hanging out, everyone's laughing at this thing, and then you say this really funny, clever, amazing thing, and like at that exact moment, like everyone looks away and nobody hears what you said, and you're like, I just said something really clever and nobody heard it, right? Or maybe you share like a really good idea or an observation, and it's like people don't hear it, but then later on somebody they end up like stealing your idea, or they end up presenting it, and like they don't even realize that they stole it from you. Like they don't even like understand that, because that was it was not recognized, it was not invited out, like it just blurted out so that energy doesn't carry and you won't be noticed. It's like it's kind of this like backwards thing of like you think you're going to be noticed and you go chasing for it and you try to express something, but because you did it in incorrect timing, it wasn't noticed, but somebody else will get that idea and they'll think it's theirs and they'll say it and they'll get the credit, and it can be really really agitating. And you can kind of end up getting in a loop like that because you think you have to talk more to, you know, explain it or get that recognition, but it'll just end up like, again, spinning wheels. These undefined centers have this spinning out kind of aspect where it's like you'll never get to that point of satisfaction. You'll never get to that point of like, I did it and I was recognized and they noticed me and I got this attention and it was great. It's like, no, you end up saying something goofy and like tripping on your face and looking silly, you know, like you just look like you're like looking for that, you know, attention, and it just, they never come off so good. So yeah, with like the undefined throat, you know, just try to grow comfortable with the silence and letting people ask for your opinion and your ideas and letting them invite you, because that's going to end up being just, it's going to just work out better for you. It's going to work out better for you. It's going to feel better. You're going to feel good. You're going to get that attention when it's correct and the timing is right. And so it'll just work out better in your favor. So as difficult as it can be for an undefined throat to just try to be comfortable with the silence and let people notice you and invite you and bring you in that way. So thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us, with me, I guess, since Danny, his internet has not come back. So thanks for hanging out with me and bearing with me that it was a little awkward without Danny's here to bounce off of and get his good insights. But thanks for bearing with me and hanging out. I really appreciate it. So yeah, conditioning and human design, like final thoughts. We're meant to receive from other people. Like we're meant to, like we have these receptors. Anything that's white or undefined in your chart, like those are these receptors where we're meant to like pull in data and information from other people. But the important thing is remembering that it's from other people. Like this energy is not yours, right? Like the colored in stuff in your chart, that's you. That's your definition. You can notice, you can rely on it, you can work with that, and you can rely on it and know that it's yours, and you know, follow your strategy and authority to make those correct decisions. But that undefined stuff, all the stuff that's white in your chart, whether it's the centers or even the gates and stuff, that's where you're meant to receive that information from other people. And you can have fun with it, enjoy it, just realize it's other people and it's not you. So those little keynotes can be really, really helpful for the different centers, because it can just give a pause to be like, am I trying to get attention? Am I trying to prove myself? Am I trying to show that I'm really smart and I know everything? You know, am I looking for my love and direction and I'm chasing it? You know, all these little keynotes, you know, and you learn them as you go, like they just kind of stack on top of each other. They can be really helpful to just give a moment of pause of, hey, that's not me. That energy is not me. What if I just witnessed it? What if I didn't let it like take me for the proverbial ride? You know, what if I use this in my own favor for like true me instead of not self me? You know, like you have that you, and you have like the doppelganger of you. It's like when you look in a mirror, it's like a mirror flips your image. The left and the right are flipped. It's not you. That's why it can look a little weird. And, you know, it's like Alice in Wonderland kind of stuff. That's not you, even if it looks like you. The not self looks like you, but it's not you. It's like wearing a skin suit of you. And it's usually telling you stuff that doesn't feel good. It's usually like, you should keep going even though you're exhausted. You should keep trying to get that attention even though you look like a fool. You should try to prove yourself even though, you know, you lack integrity in the process. It's usually telling you something that split second after you can hear or feel something in your body that's like, I'm done with this now, or that's not for me. Right? You can feel that in your body, and then like a split second later, it's just like, you should keep going. You should do this. Oh, you're not good enough. Ooh, boo, boo, boo. Right? It'll just like tell you this nonsense. And if you can just give yourself like that minute to just, not even minute, like moment, like split second, you know, to just pause and witness it and be like, that energy is not me. oh, that like go, 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 keep going energy of the sacral, that's not me. You know, like my boyfriend's a manifesting generator. And when he is getting ready for work, when he's getting ready for work, like I've learned, get out of the way, because it almost feels like popcorn going off, right? He's got the 3420. So it's like now, 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 now. It's like busy, busy. And I've noticed, and I'm like, why do I feel so antsy and edgy? Or like I should be doing something, or I'm not doing enough. He's going to be mad at me. He's never been mad at me. And it's like, oh no, he's getting ready for work. His sacral is going and it's buzzing. But now that I know that's him, cool. I'm just going to be in the other room and out of that way, instead of thinking that I need to keep going. I need to do something, right? Like that's not what it's about. That's his energy, right? That emotional energy. It's just like, it's not my energy to feel in someone else's molasses because they're in a weird place in their wave. Like with love, I'm going to go to the other room and just kind of regroup into myself. With any of this, like if you're feeling weird in a situation, like walk away for a few minutes, go be in another room, go take a walk around the block or something. And you'll find like pretty immediately, if you can just get into your own aura and away from other people's data, right? Like if you think of it as like, we're just in other people's data, you're picking up all of that electricity. But if you can step away for a moment, you can really regroup and be like, that's not me. I felt like I was drowning a minute ago when I was standing next to that person, but like, that's their energy. This isn't mine. And yeah, if you can break aura for like 10, 15 minutes, especially if like it's an argument or it's a tough situation or some kind of like edgy situation, like just walk away for like 10, 15 minutes and you'll be able to really regroup. And so will the other person. Then you can come back in a better place and actually like make it through that conversation, make it through the argument, so you're not ruining a relationship over it. I love that. Friends with audio, always picture through the looking glass. Yeah, exactly. It's just like that you and that not you, right? It's that doppelganger of like, it looks like you, but it's a little off. And being able to like recognize who you really are, it's a really powerful thing. And like human design allows us like the language. It allows us like, energy is so like this intangible thing, like you can't see it. It doesn't feel real in a way, but you know it's happening, right? You know when you feel uncomfortable, when you're like, there's a weird guy across that street, I'm not going to walk that way because that feels sketchy. Or you feel someone with really good energy, like, oh my god, I love being near you. Or you have chemistry with the loved one or something, right? A significant other. And that data is real, that energy is real. And so I love with human design that it gives you a means of like a language of like how to work with it, how to see it, how to witness it. And in witnessing it, it's like that tension drops. It can get so awkward and uncomfortable in situations when the energy is all riled up and it's all like, and you're amplifying their stuff, they're amplifying your stuff, and it just feels tense and crazy and chaotic. But if you can just pause and go, the energy is weird, or like you're in a low place on your wave, or I didn't listen to my sacral, or whatever it is for each person, it can really just like drop out the energy. It can really like soften it, and all that tension and electricity goes away. Or at the very least, just like walk away for 5-10 minutes, be like, cool, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I'm just going to take a walk around the block, or whatever it could be. And you can really save some relationships in that way too. Like, you end up in some goofy arguments because everyone is just amplifying the other's definition and their energy, and we think it's ours, and it can get so uncomfortable. Whereas like, just walk away and regroup and remember who you are, and then they'll hopefully remember who they are, and then you can come back together and make it nice and apologize, and hey, I was upset and you're upset, and da da da, and make it through in that way. And just continue to learn to like who we really are, right? Like, that's what's cool about human design. It's like it's the science of human differentiation. It's why are you? Why am I me? Why are we different? And we can respect that and appreciate that about one another. And I can honor my strategy and authority, and I could encourage you to do yours, and everything feels better, right? If you honor your strategy and authority, it's going to feel better for me. And if I honor my strategy and authority, it's going to feel better for all the people around me. And that's what I love about human design. And like kind of what my hope is with this show and this channel is just the more people understand this, the better their lives are going to be. And that is going to like ripple out in this positive way. It's like a snowball that gets bigger and bigger. It's like, it's just going to keep improving everything, because the more you know who you are and I know who I am, and we're living that clean and pure and happy, and we're amplifying that in one another, and we get to become the best versions of ourselves, like everything just gets better out from there, from that like individual level out to the tribal and the collective. And I don't know, that's my like goal for the world, and what I hope I can put out there in my own little positive way. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for bearing with the technical difficulties and not having Danny around for this. Definitely a bit of a third line moment for me bumping into it. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm handling it now. So thank you for hanging out. Thank you for commenting and liking and subscribing and sharing all the good stuff. We were going to do the completely open centers after this, but since Danny's having his technical internet issues, I think we're just going to rain check that and come back to that episode another time. So thanks for hanging out for this conditioning in human design. And we will see you next week. We'll be diving into the I Ching. Yeah, we're diving into the I Ching because it's always like, oh, human design and the I Ching and Kabbalah and this and that. And it's just like, well, what is this? So next week, we're going to be diving into the I Ching, the trigrams, and the development of hexagrams. So that's going to be like really fun and super, super nerdy. And then we're going to be explaining the 8 trigrams into more detail to help us understand like how that lays the foundation for the hexagrams and human design and all the good stuff. So thank you everyone for hanging out, and we will see you next week. Bye.